Game 6. Good game, though. Good game. Usually game 6 in the World Championship cycles, most competitive in the past cycles. And let's dive in. I think it's possibly the good game out of the entire match so far. Like, so far, it's good game. Good ideas. There are some weird decision that happens during the game, but nevertheless, it was a try. We had Ding with d4, which is shocking. We had Ding usually play e4 and some strange knight of 3 b3, which is was kind of like weird. However, we are back to normal d4. This is actually what he normally plays: d4, c4. I don't know if we're gonna see c4. Hopefully, we will. Maybe we'll never see it in this match, but time will only tell. So we have knight f6. So you have two choices: knight f3, c4. You also have more than two choices, but if you're playing the main lines, I think c4 or knight f3. But we had bishop f4. We have the London. It's okay to play. It's okay to play in a game or two. I mean, the London is people could play it in the beginner levels all the way to Magnus. Magnus played this. I think Kasparov played it as well. So, it's very solid opening. You can play it at all levels, all time controls. However, if you were to play the Londons throughout the match, this is going to be like extremely boring stuff. And I don't know if we need to do any kind of recap if we get to see this. But, it's known to be boring, predictable, same ideas, same plans. But this game actually turns out to be that, we have some kind of action. And that's what we like to see. Some kind of new ideas whenever you have any kind of chance to create them or do them. So we had d5. This is all standard e3s. Typically, we want to do this, knight f3, knight d2. This is very typical ideas. So we have e6, we have knight f3, we have c5, we have c3, and then we have bishop d6. And normally you play bishop c3, and then again you just play knight bd2, knight bishop d3. It's all standard. But here, as soon as this actually happened, and by the way, this has been played before. It is good stuff. If you play bishop b5, this has to be a preparation. There's no way that it's not. The reason I'm saying this after knight c6, by the way, you cannot play knight here because you lose the bishop, so you need to do knight c6 perhaps. Now, the reason is this. You take on c6, and you're looking at this, maybe bishop e6 is coming, and this whole diagonal is pretty interesting for black to take. However, the idea is simply you take, queen takes, and then we have queen e4. It doesn't necessarily stop bishop e6, but in some lines it does. But you're looking at queen e3 though, and putting some pressure on c5 because you cannot take because the queen will be, just simply win the queen on d6. So we had castles, and then we had queen e3. This is actually prepared line, and both sides are playing fast, especially Ding. Ding is the one. Is moving very fast, and I understand why. This is something that he's preparing in this game. So knight f d2, and then we had e5. Also, Gukesh is playing fast. Takes, queen takes e5. Here's the thing, though. Gukesh has to remember this. If you don't remember this, you might be in trouble. Meaning, you already lost a pawn. If you don't know how to continue, or it's not don't know, it's more like if you don't remember the line. Because there's always a potential that you don't remember a certain move. This is something that you remember maybe like the past 10 years, 5 years, 4 years, past year even. Do you remember it? If you remember it, that's fine. If you don't remember it, then, there are, different conversation we could have. But here it turns out to be that he does remember here, and obviously should you castle here, that's a big problem because here, there's mate on g2. You have to play something like this. You lose an exchange, which should be winning for black. So we have here, and then we have queen takes g2. And the next move, castles long. Now, Ding is known at this match. He castles long, or he doesn't castle at all. Maybe he just castled one game. But normally his king is in the center of the board, or he castles long. So in this situation, castling long is the best move by far, which is not typical to see in the London. That's very good stuff. However, should you play this perfectly, the bad news here though, if you play perfectly, it's a draw and maybe in 2 moves. And that would be we going home so fast, and it's just boring stuff should this happen, But, I mean, obviously, Ding is basically saying you have to remember the line. Should you remember the line? Okay. If you don't remember the line, then we have a game, and that alone makes sense. I mean, it's a try. It's not a bad try. It's actually a good try. Queen takes f2, pawn takes, and here you have to be careful though. Rook b8 is probably reasonable. However, if you, let's say, play something like this has to be winning here. The knight jumps, attack the queen. Should you play, let's see, something like this here? Should you go here? You're getting mated. Should you take, I believe, is pawn takes. There's a big idea here. Here, you checkmated on d8. I think you have to take here and some kind of rook here. You have to sack the bishop and, takes. Obviously, should you play king h8, you're getting mated on f8. So once you play here, it's totally winning for white. So you have to remember. So obviously, rook b8 makes a lot of sense because if you were to play knight e4, it's a big issue simply because queen takes b2, checkmate. So obviously here, you have to be a little bit concerned about the moves. The only move here I believe that makes sense is knight c4. Knight c4, and this has, Ding is blitzing the moves so fast. This is all prepared. So knight d6 is coming, but not now, because right now is maybe here. So I think it maybe rook d2 and knight d6 potential ideas. It turns out to be that there's a corresponding game here where it's like queen f3 is a move. It's a very hard, deep idea, and and if should this to happen, maybe we could see a draw like in 2-3 move after this, and it would have been boring. But Gukesh didn't remember the line, didn't remember the game. I think this is really what Ding was counting for, is this specific game in the database where where it's like computer checked, and I don't understand queen f3 much, but I feel like if I'm taking black, I'll play bishop e6, which actually Gukesh did play that. And we had rook d2, queen f3 now, attacking the rook, and then rook e1. And then you look at this and you tell yourself, this all prepared lines, I could simply just take on c4 and maybe black is fine. And this is actually what happened, and then queen f5. I think computer may be looking at this and maybe some kind of drawing. I think there's a line where you don't mind rook d6. And I think it's a draw, I believe, somehow here. It's not easy to make this move for Gukesh because he's looking at this kind of preparation, so he's not sure if this is something I should be able to play. His next move does make sense, actually, and I felt like it's a reasonable move, queen f5. You simply want to take on e5. White's slightly better, though. White has to be better because he's simply looking at... So once you play queen f5, the reason white is better is actually after queen takes e6, which actually happened. The problem we are having here, though, Ding spent 42 minutes in this move. 43, 42, 44 even minutes. And he spent 40 minutes in this position. I would basically, predicting that he's looked at the entire thing, lines, every single line. I mean, should he spend 42 minutes here? The position is like, limited pieces now on the board. It's easy to see everything. He worked every single line. He's likely to blitz a couple moves after this. 42 minutes here, and if you haven't worked out the lines, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's still not like a difficult position from White's perspective. I have an explanation for this, but let's make the next move, and I'm gonna, say why, why White didn't feel comfortable in this position. So obviously, queen takes c6 is the best move. Takes on e5, happened instantly here, and then we have this kind of move, queen d5. It's good move. There's also rook e d1 could have been also a better move as well. Same idea, same plans. We had this move, we have here, we have here, we have here, we have here, and we have here, and we have here. So should you go back to e7, Ding would claim a draw by repetition. You spend 42 minutes and then you going for a draw. I mean, you could have probably did this in like 10, 20 minutes. I mean, why should you spend 42 minutes and it's a draw here? I mean, this decision is like kind of strange. Like I wouldn't justify this amount of time that he's sinking. And then we draw in 3 moves, like repetition. It's just very strange choice. The reason this is actually strange, you're looking at 3 versus 1. You know, I mean, how this is, you know, you're playing a draw here. I have a reason for this. It's a psychological reason, actually. Ding possibly looked at this, you know, potential that the king maybe not, you know, not very safe at c1, you know, and maybe there's potential attack on the king. So the pawn's cannot be ruling fast enough on the board. Like you cannot play c4, c5 quick enough. And then there's potential attack on the king. So he felt like it's not easy to play. It's not true, but psychologically he felt like this is not, you know, without even thinking about some lines, psychologically he felt like black has enough counterplay. And this is the reason why he went for a draw. Obviously, you do have to be careful moving the pawns, but, you know, there was not a big concern about the king so much. So we have a shock there, actually. Queen e7 is not the move. I mean, Gukesh declined the draw. And people were basically talking about Gukesh is, you know, declining a draw here. I mean, he's, you know, this 3 versus 1. I mean, he might be looking at, you know, different situations. Like right now, he felt like Ding spend like 42 minutes. Maybe he could spend like another 30 minutes here. He may have better odds, like winning on time. He also felt like maybe he could do a couple moves and he may draw the game in the next couple moves. I mean, psychologically, it does make sense, right? You spend 40 minutes and then you offer a draw, and, you know, Gukesh had some time to think here. And he may felt like he has enough to draw the game later, like the next couple, you know, 5-6 moves. But nevertheless, this is actually like, it's a kind of risky to play like that. I mean, maybe Queen e7 and would have been like a draw. I think black taking a draw here it's a good achievement. But to make the game exciting, and game 6 usually it is exciting, so Queen h4 was played. So obviously he's attacking the rook. And I felt like here it's easy to play for white. You know, you start moving the rook here, and then you're looking at the triple stack, and it's easy to play for white now, I believe. All you have to do is start pushing the pawns. Sometime next year or this year, we would see like a pawn push. You have fast pawns. You know, you try to push them. Maybe not so fast enough, but you know, your ideas are based on pushing them, right? You have 3-on-1. I don't know what else you need that in order to try to win. But we had g6, and I think this is a good move. I actually felt like black is not just playing g6. He's trying to like consider ideas like h5 later. You know, he could play f5 at some point. Not now, obviously, he cannot do it. There's also like back rank issue. You know, maybe he's also, so g6 is a reasonable move here. I actually feel like this is a good move. There might be some concerns on the dark squares. However, the rook is, you know, the queen moves. It opens up for like rook d7, rook d6 ideas, rook d4 even. It felt like this is really good move, I think. And then we had rook here. I actually felt this rook move is interesting. It is very interesting. Why this rook and not the other one? You know, you could argue and say the rook is keeping an eye on b2. I felt like Gukesh kept the rook on f8 for potential f4, f5, f4. It's probably a good decision. You know, you're looking ahead. You need the rook behind the pawn in order to do some kind of like, you know, pawn break, or you start pushing your past pawn. It's actually interesting decision by him. And then we had queen over at g3. Actually here, it's interesting choice, but I don't know. I mean, there are lines the computer is suggesting queen takes, and the game likely to end in a draw. It's also because the white is delaying his pawn push for some time, and you know, black might be on time to play. You know, it's like a race of past pawns. This, if you look over the computer here, and even if you give it some time, it just feels it's a draw. You're looking at some kind of like f5, g5. I think here it looks like it's a draw. A little bit surprising that Gukesh didn't go for this. He had some time, and he declined the draw, so he's playing on. So this is psychologically, he had his chance here to consider this position, but he wanted the queen to be on for some time. The psychological stuff happening in this game, like in a lot of the moves. So queen here, and then he played here. This actually, it's not a bad move. You're looking at some, you're dancing the other side of the board now, and you're creating some ideas going after the c1 king. We have queen f4, again, taking some, maybe queen f6 at some point, some rook move sometime. We have queen e5, and then we have e3. So obviously queen e5 was attacking e2. Queen b5, there was concerns about this one, but I don't think it's like a big deal after rook here. This is very strong move, actually. Now you're looking at rook takes e4. There's potential rook b8. So let's say you want to play this. Good luck. This move, you possibly, this a big issue, of course. It's not easy to do anything for black, but I actually felt this queen e2 idea didn't make too much sense. You go for queen e5, queen b5, and queen e2. His queen was on h5, right? Wasn't the queen on h5? There's potential of queen f3. Again, black had to consider ways. So when the queen on g3, he just could have took the queen. Again, it's a little bit of strange from black. Just to go for queen e5 to queen b5 and then queen e2, and then he goes back, to on the king side. I mean, I felt like maybe he should have just took on g3. It's a much easier choice for him. So this is actually what happened here, and then he went here. You could argue and say you could take on e4. I mean, not so easy. Takes, and queen takes h2, and now you're dealing with like massive pass pawns for black. So you had to do this, and then queen f3. Queen f3, again, you could have played it when you were on h5. This move was actually there. So now I think Gukesh is probably, happy with a draw, perhaps. It's actually a very important moment here for white, what to do. I think the best move by far is actually to avoid the trade of queens, because should you trade queens, it's a draw. What keeps your chances a little bit like with having some advantages possibly here. Should he play king g7 or something, then we have sometimes c4, and then you start pushing the pawns, pass pawns, and then you may have some chances. The queen is also defending on here, so this potentially could do this. We had king c2. I don't know. This felt like it's a gamble of a move, because you could trade on f4 right now, and then we have a pass pawn at e4. I mean, the king could be used as a blockader. I mean, if we take a look here, takes, the king could start moving and use b, and it's a way to stop the pawns, but, the black pawns have start moving. I mean, white is not moving his pass pawns. Black is, and it's kind of strange if you look at this position, which actually what happened is takes, and then takes, and then f5. You connect all the 4 pawns, connect 4. This has to be like black is in the game. I actually feel like here it's getting really like you're dancing between waters at this point. Like I think here it's completely, white has to be careful in this kind of setup. The pawns are getting. I mean, this is already a pass pawn. My concern in this game is like some kind of king g7, king here, and believe it or not, this could be winning. You could even sack on e7, and things are getting really tough here. White had the weird defenses against this kind of setup, but again, this is all like draw. Like white is actually fighting for a draw. It's not so much like trying to win. So h4 is one way. I think maybe c4, if I'm not mistaken, could have been the move. Maybe stop pushing. Should he play here? Then we have rook e2. Something strange about c4 that it's not coming. And like I don't understand that when exactly we're gonna start pushing the pass pawns. I don't think there's a way now. They delayed this entire time, and it felt like if anybody's pushing pass pawns, it's actually black. And a little bit strange, but again, We had f5 and h4. Actually, h4 is to counter, all possibilities. Should you go here with a stake? We had e3 here. Actually, it's a slight mistake. It's still, I think this position is drawn anyway. I was looking at king g7 actually. Let's go this. Just to give up some lines here, by the way, if you were to play here, and let's say you go for this ending, assuming that, it's a draw or something, that maybe Ding was going for this. Actually, this is winning after c4, or b4 even. The reason this is winning, you could argue and say the king cannot, move a lot because of e3. I think he plays e4, e4, e5, b6 or something, c5, a6, b6, and then you start getting your king to king e3, king here, king c5, and then he may be able to win on, b6, e7. The king might be going to c6, even though he plays e3, but you promote first. So the 3 versus 1 is winnable, even with a pawn at e4 sitting there. So I think Gukesh was able to see this, and this is not easy because now should he play check, maybe king d1 and then the rook will be active here, because you kind of need to stop this. So there was another way though, for Gukesh to say, well, can I just play here? There's also another line. Let me see, king h4, and I think. Yeah, so if here, I don't think rook d7 is required by white. I think this is possibly the pattern, and this is the only way you could stop, black from trying. So this is a funny line though here, and I think, yeah. So here's the issue. There's a mating ideas happening, like here and possibly here, and then you have something like this. You have mate. So black has to be careful where to go. I don't think it matters around here. You still play the same ideas and you try to box the king. So there was always a tricky rook g2 idea around here. So the king has to go to, or you could, yeah, the king has to go to d1. And there's also like rook g2 between moves. I mean, you could also do this. Actually, not here, not so much. I think you have to play this, king here. Oh, excuse me, king e2. So king e3, and then you play rook g2, and then you could, you basically could stop the pawns from moving, from the king from moving over here, and still a draw. But it's a, you have to find like king over king e2. So this is the reason why it's this idea being stopped by king d1. Gukesh probably saw this, and he was in time trouble here. And it's not easy to find moves. You still have to see a lot of moves in, like he had like a couple, I think he had like maybe 5 minutes around here. So this one is, allowing white to do some kind of ideas. For example, here, and I think here you could have played c4 if I'm not mistaken. C4 doesn't seem to click in, for Ding. C4 is not playable. It's probably not a move he's not looking to play, but he played, I think, he's going over here to attack the pawn, but here I felt like, how could you take the pawn? The next move is pretty logical. So h5 is pretty good, actually. This may actually be a draw now. They need to stop. So the reason it's pretty good here is, and I think after king g7, you still have the idea to trade down here, and this is actually fine. The pawns are not going anywhere. The f4 pawn's keeping this. You could always trade on g5. It's still tricky though. But this line may allow like c4, c5. So around here, let's see, just going back. Oh, he took here, and it's funny. I don't think like taking is a bad thing. It's heading toward the draw though, so I don't think it really matters much. Black was able to find a draw. H4, and then you take. By the way, here though. I think if you play here, there's a potential of rook here, if I'm not mistaken. Something like here, 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 and you could take here, and then you could win. The reason this is winning, of course, the king is on the box. Could stop all these two pawns, and then the pawns are going to start rolling. There was a nice way for white to do this. Obviously, when you if this were to happen, obviously this is the only way you could fight. You could continue the game. However, this is not possible because check. This doesn't work anymore. Should you do after king g7, because should you do this, actually black is winning, and there's a reason why you take, and then you're not inside the box after takes here to stop the pawn, so simply wins. You go here. Tricky ending. So obviously here it's a draw. I mean, maybe c4 at some point once the rook was on e7. It would have changed the game slightly. So obviously after here, king g7, the only way you could draw is rook g2. By the way, here, you have to be precise. You have to go back. That's the reason why it's a draw. Black cannot really continue. So once you go here, you just simply go back. And there's no improvements. So obviously king here is you're looking at king g6. Should white consider playing c4, then the king is going to get active, and it's going to complicate the game. It should be black's favor. It should king g6, king f5. If you give it the chance, you still have like a pass pawn at h7, and you still have e3. So white has to stop this king advancement and stop this entire idea. However, there's one move I need to point out. They actually did a repetition here. Should you play here? That's gonna be checkmate. Checkmate is because of here, and then checkmate. So that's the reason why you have to be careful. So that's the reason why it's a repetition. We going back here. It's a draw after all. Competitive. Weird choices in between, like how Dink was playing queen d6 and actually wants to draw after like 42 minutes of sinking. He could have pushed c4, b4 at some point. He could have considered like pawn push and would have changed the game in his favor perhaps. Queen h4 by Gukesh, it was a little bit like a gamble, because white could still actively play for a win or for an advantage and try to, able to find small advantage if he can just by pushing the pass pawn. Nevertheless, this is still competitive, especially it's a prepared line, which is what we like to see, like a new line preparation. Even if the idea is based on a draw at the very end, but it's still like you're trying. You're asking your opponents questions, how you can defend. Do you remember all the lines? So it was competitive, even though it's a draw. It was a fairly good game. We're going to have tomorrow, or today actually, in a couple of hours, we're going to see game 7. Gukesh is going to have white. I'm predicting we might, I don't know if we're going to see an e4. I mean, should we see e4? I'm expecting a French. If we're going to see d4, then it means, Gukesh having some nightmares against the French now. So we may as well like have to play different opening. D4 just to play something else. My prediction is probably d4. Psychologically, he may feel like the French, he's not well prepared for it, or Dink continues surprising him with different lines. I think d4 makes sense, and we'll see from there. It should be competitive. The game is still tied. It's still not easy to see who's going to win. It might be tie breaks, who knows. But we're looking for more competitive games, hopefully, and I will see you guys soon with more game review. Take care. Thanks, folks.